Asia have welcomed the news that the US and China are making progress in trade talks, dispersing the smoke of a trade war, according to Chinese media. Well, after high-level talks in Washington late last week, Beijing agreed to substantially reduce America's trade deficit with China, and it's committed to significantly increase its purchases of American goods. How it's going to do that, though, has not been specified. The Trump administration had sought to slash the deficit by $200 billion. Michele Geraci is the head of Nottingham University's China Economic Policy Programme. He's based at the university's business school in China and joins me now from Ningbo near Shanghai. Good to talk to you, Michele. Fascinating times. Who do you think blinked first in this trade battle?
I think it's a win-win for both. As we know, over the last few weeks, couple of months, both countries have, at least in the media, raised the stakes with the tariffs being imposed on Chinese imports into the US and expected the retaliation on the side of China to impose tariffs on the imports from the US. Now, both countries have realized, and I think Trump always knew, that raising tariffs does not really do much to narrow the trade deficit. It does, however, a lot to the exporter of United States, for example, agricultural products. So in a way, Trump is not trying really to narrow these $370 billion of the deficit, which, again, would not be easy to narrow, but rather he's trying to protect maybe a sub-segment of its industrial base, probably in the Midwest, from cheap imports of Chinese goods. That's his tactic. And it seems to be working.
Yes, interesting. And in terms of a negotiating tactic, do you think it has brought China to the table more effectively than before?
It has, because when you have two countries where there is a continuous trade surplus like China, at least in theory, that's the one that has to lose most. And so China is very careful on the media and in public to, of course, make a strong voice. But then we all know that behind the scene agreements are made. And this is what happened over the last few days. Both countries have, not in public, come to a kind of a settlement in the interest of China that still, although its economy is moving away from being dependent on export, still needs for the next, and will need for the next 5-10 years, the US as an export market. So it's in the interest of China not to upset the US too much, and it is in the interest of the US to keep on exporting its product, such as agriculture, into China. So trade war that I never thought it would escalate, and I'm glad that I see it now being diffused. More rational players, Indeed. Both countries.
A big issue, though, is technology transfers, cyber theft, and intellectual property. Those kinds of issues, which China doesn't kind of respect in most jurisdictions. Is that going to be a tougher issue for them to get China to acquiesce on?
I think it's tougher because the only way to protect intellectual property is to innovate faster than people can copy. There is very little that the legal system can do, although we try to make these copying or emulation last as long as possible so that one country has enough time to move up and reinvent itself. But a few days ago, I was discussing with other colleagues, and they mentioned, I didn't know, that Van Gogh was copying paintings from Japanese artists. I don't know if many people know that, but he became famous for those paintings. And so what did he do? He kept on painting better and better paintings until he became more famous than his Chinese counterpart. And this is what And it's, let's check the story. I don't know if it's true, but I think it's interesting to bring it up. The US has the power to, on one hand, being copied and at the same time innovate quickly, much more than other countries. And I think it can take the hit.
Do you think North Korea played a part in kind of these two big powers wanting not to be in the middle of a trade war because it's going to be delicate to get any deal with North Korea?
Well, I do believe that China has played an important, I think a paramount part in this North Korea situation. We know that the leaders have met a few times here in China, and in a way, China has an interest to keep Korea stable. And there was a point where China I wouldn't say was losing control of Korea, because China never controlled Korea, but we do know that Korea depends on the trades with China. And so I think the US did encourage the Chinese leadership to put some pressure on Kim Jong, and so that, again, win-win, I said for 2 at the beginning, now it's win-win for 3. Do you know what? I made a prediction. There may be a Nobel Prize for one of these 3 leaders in the next couple of years.
Or maybe all 3. It's fascinating times. Michele, good to talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now. Well, the outcome